kiss for you.
Today we're looking at AI before ChatGPT and kind of the invasion of that technology. We're looking at AI in two specific examples for AI presentations as well as AI robotics. And the reason I bring these up is because these are both fields that appeal to enterprise and businesses, right? This is kind of the first time that enterprise and businesses were able to use AI to any commercial extent and actually decrease the labor cost of various decisions, right? Because labor is obviously very important and expensive, so they want to try and reduce that as much as possible. Doing AI presentations lets you do that in terms of reducing costs for like training, for example, or promotion of products or sales pitches, that kind of thing. If you can do that with AI, having an AI person, AI script and that stuff, AI kind of visuals, then all of a sudden you can reduce that cost dramatically because you only need someone to create that. It takes about 30 seconds or whatever, right? You don't need someone to go in and actually record voice lines and do all that. You can do it with AI. So that's kind of the first situation that we have here. I tried doing something similar when I was working for a company. They were interested in doing AI presentations because they were like, oh, this is going to save me a bunch of time. Working on these instead, I can actually just pump these out and then do other things. So the first one here was Reels. The second one was Hour One. They're technically the same company, but it's just kind of like the base they're using. We'll check up on what these companies are doing now. But back in early 2020, before ChatGPT was available, this is kind of what you would expect for AI presentations. So this was not that good, but what it did do well was the kind of presentation aspect. So for example, you can select presenter, your scene, your voices, the style you want, any logos you want, any music, any kind of like video style. And you can see the slides on the side here. In this case, there's like a 30-second demo, but it really just kind of showcases how the technology works, right? You have a person that AI generated a script on whatever topic, and you can like put them in different locations. So you can have them in a circle. You can have them like a newscaster in a minute where it'll be like on the side here with an image in the background, right? And this is very useful, obviously, because just having a talking head is kind of boring, so you can like vary it up. But it also really showcases the amount of styles you can go with, right? This is the person, what he's wearing and stuff is all AI, generated and influenced. You have various styles here for different people that aren't real. And then you have, voices you can change and background colors and everything like that. And it's really interesting because, like, these are AI people. These are not real people, and businesses are going to be using these, or at one point we're trying to use these for this really quick speed training, right? And I think that's a little bit of a disconnect because when you see someone actually going through a script, like a human being, I would think that's better than having an AI do it here, but that's ultimately what this is. This was around, again, 2020, and we'll look at where they are now, because they are quite a bit different right now, and how that works. So, Hour One is currently also working with AI presentations, still. However, they're obviously more focused on enterprise, as they found that's their niche. However, as you can see, they've grown quite considerably. They're being used by, Lowell and Hewlett-Packard and Bayer and Johnson & Johnson, and their talking points are pretty similar, right? Learning and development, training videos, customer growth, things like personalized outreach, cost savings is obviously, and generation and engagement. Engagement's a little bit interesting. I think that might just be you can create more variety this way, maybe, compared to someone that has to do it as a job. But it's definitely a cost saving and video creation quickness kind of thing, speed that's really being sampled here. This obviously shows how it works. You can pick your person, you can pick your language. Because when you start using these for things like customer service, those are very important roles that often get overlooked and often get kind of delegated to lower ranking people. But it's just really a problem when you have these people that aren't people going through a script. They're literally just AI trying to pretend that they're people, right? Because people don't really, most individuals and users of products don't like having this little like chat thing in the side that they have to talk to. But if it's on, a phone and a real person, it might not matter. That might be the difference between, getting a call and not getting a call. So I think that's something that you see a lot of the time. And this is like the modern website, right? This is obviously showing real growth, shows the power and shows how quickly this has been adopted. Because you got to understand, like, this wasn't a huge thing back in 2021. All of a sudden, it's massive, right? There's security grades and all this stuff you can get and a bunch of reviews and a bunch of articles about it, and all of a sudden it's blowing up. To me, it feels a little scary because it's all of a sudden replacing the human element of something like customer service with worse customer service, because it's going to be someone that's not actually even a real person. Now, depending on your view of how well customer service typically goes for you, you might see this as a benefit. I don't really see it as a benefit because I like to think that, customer service roles or training in general, in order to be effective, should, generally speaking, be a little bit more personalized rather than the opposite of that, right? AI is like the opposite of being able to be personalized. But obviously, Hour One's not the only company doing this. We have presentations.ai, which is also working to be AI presentations. Now, this one's a little bit different. It's not super focused on the avatar aspect. It's just kind of using AI and chatbot to make presentations for you, which I obviously think is pretty usable and probably a good thing, depending on how much time is being spent doing presentations. But I also think that could be detrimental in case of fatigue of presentations is a thing. When AI is doing it, because it's all going to be homogenized anyway, it could be even worse. Obviously, companies have certain standards and brand consistencies they have to go through, but if it's all being done by AI, it could be even worse. But I can see this being a lot better as a tool than something like the AI speakers, because AI speakers, have a lot around what voices can you use. Does it sound natural? Does it get the point across that they're trying to do? Languages obviously are going to be an issue, but this is a little bit more streamlined, although it does, have the removing more people, right? Because all of a sudden, if you decide, oh, we don't need 4 or 5 different people doing this to translate, we can just use AI to translate, then you get into cultural things and tonalities and all that for the languages, that if you just let AI do it, all of a sudden, you're completely messed up. You don't know that because it's in a different language. But all of a sudden, your messaging is completely messed up. Your marketing doesn't make any sense at all, right? Because it's not using actual translations. It's using AI translation. Because I think a lot of the time people think that because of the wave of, AI stuff and AI video and all that, that we're in a real bad spot with AI now because it just isn't good and it's feeding off each other and all that. And while I do agree to some extent that we are feeding AI into AI and making it worse, it is so much better than it was before. It is so much just easier to use and understanding context and understanding reality. As much as it seems like the images and videos and AI people and music that we're creating are still obviously AI, there's such a far extent to what we were using AI before. Now, that's different than machine learning. This is a thing that is learning based on a lot of prompts and a lot of information, and it's not a generative process. Well, it's a generative process, but it's not a generational process that machine learning is, which is just doing the same thing, and over generations, you kind of get better and better at it. This is trying to use the learning that it gets from people to improve itself, which is why you'll see stuff like Bing and these other kind of chat models losing the ability to work as easily because they're feeding in on itself a lot of the time, right? And you can also see that with what they're able to do. When we first tried it out, if you saw the video of me comparing all 3, Google's Gemini, the Copilot, Bing here, and ChatGPT, you'll see that they all started with very specific benefits and drawbacks, and now they're basically pretty homogenized. Copilot here is doing what DALL-E does and generating images. ChatGPT is also generating images and trying to look at the web. Gemini is trying to use Google, but just hallucinating and saying it can and it can't. So there's a lot of these that are kind of like, oh, you can make images of this one, even though that was DALL-E's benefit. You can just do it in here now, right? And so they're not being very specific. They're kind of just piling as many AI features as humanly possible onto it. I would still say that piling a bunch of these features that make images is better than having some random AI generated person avatars here that are going to be used in a large enterprise for sales. And as much as you might not like AI generating images and art and stuff, given enough time, I think will be better for inspiration and for ability to drop concepts. This can be used poorly. This is designed to be used poorly. There is not the goals that they're saying, replacing product marketing, learning and development, avatars, customer support.
Steve. I'm Brand.
These aren't things you should be wanting to replace with AI. Images, well, many people would say aren't something you want to replace with AI, are very useful for giving inspiration. This is kind of what AI is supposed to do, right? The other form of AI before the ChatGPT explosion that was using voice synthesis and dialogue synthesis as well as human sort of features was these really weird robots that had human skin for fun, I guess, and were able to kind of interact. And this was sort of a way to get, I think it was the idea of hospital care and for some reason, and kind of the ability to interact like a normal human would and have conversation and stuff. But obviously before the language model breakthrough, these are very stilted, very weird looking, and sort of on this evolutionary track of trying to make AI as human as possible. I think right now we're in a good spot where we're not trying to make it as human as possible, and we're just trying to make it good at a thing. And so as long as we kind of this really was the peak of AI before large language models. It was this, how can we make AI as human-like and as helpful as assistants as possible? This is the final evolution of an assistant. And I believe pretty firmly that even if people don't like image generation or planning of stuff or generating code through AI, it is way more useful than having, for example, an AI robot that follows you around all day. Temi, that's what it's called, Temi. This was a service robot here that you could basically use, and there's a variety of concerning looks for this thing. You know, the Temi Center, the Temi robots, and you can buy these for $1,000. There's the Temi 3, which is just like an iPad on a weird looking stand. There's the Temi platform, which looks to be custom, and then there's the Temi Go, which is like for food and drinks and all that stuff. So like the normal AI bot assistant kind of thing was this walking iPad that you could use to kind of get you stuff and connect to calls and things, and do things like, you know, do video, do automated assistance, recognizing requests, navigating, saving locations, doing, you know, standard stuff. And you really get the sense that these were really what AI was being used for, is these giant, expensive personal assistants. Obviously, you need an app to control it because you can't use anything without the app anymore. So it's mostly, I think, for senior living and senior centers, which is the other kind of weird thing, is we're shoving AI down into seniors' throats, which is a little, seems like the last place you want to inject AI is to people that don't really understand it and don't, you know, have a need to understand it. You're just kind of throwing all these AI wheelbarrows around where it's like, okay, we have like 6 of them in one center and they're all doing things. I mean, it's a little, not dystopian, but it's a little concerning when you have AI that's just, you know, giant cooler, giant machine, not giant, but, you know, large machine roaming around, making a ton of noise to connect you with family because you can't leave the house and you're not allowed to leave the house. It's like, it's not exactly confidence inspiring, which is, I think, another thing that people don't realize is that these are supposed to inspire confidence. The AI is supposed to be like this next frontier kind of thing. When you're seeing it replacing all these jobs and also being a part of most people, how most people experience life, right, in senior centers and in these, you know, office buildings and stuff, when these are the primary way of experiencing things is through this bot and through, you know, primary way of experience that, as well as, you know, a lot of customer facing jobs is AI, you start getting disconnected from, you know, reality, I would say. So something like this is fun tool. Something like these are very replacement factors. This doesn't, the you know, Copilot and stuff don't feel like they're going to replace things. The AI image generation isn't replacing art mostly for that fact, and doesn't feel like it's trying to replace art. This is actively trying to replace people, and this is actively trying to put AI as a replacement for, you know, needing to go out and talk to people and see friends and all that. And so that's really just kind of where I think it's heading. But I wanted to talk about this because, like, I don't see a ton of people kind of making that comparison between the old and the new here. Maybe because it's too recent, but I just see stuff like this from the old side and seeing how they're attempting to replace jobs and replace the human aspect of life here, as well as with these bots, and just feeling like that's very different than what people tend to complain about with this, which is like, oh, they're stealing art and stuff. And I'm like, that is such less of a concern than everyone having a robot here that takes care of them.